Greetings and God bless. I just wanted to do like a little expose about a lot of states that they're reading a book, they're talking to people, they're searching online, and they're making these recommendations based on statistics. And they haven't lived there, they haven't talked to anybody who's lived there anytime recently. And um, and the people that they're probably talking to who say they live there, the person who claims to live there actually spends 6 months out of the year living in Arizona or traveling, wherever. So I'm just trying to set the record straight. So I lived in Montana. I moved to Montana because I was like, oh, it's, in 2012, I thought it was just good to kind of go more inland. And so I was in Missoula, very nice place to visit, but there's a less than 1% vacancy rate. Montana is just very popular. It's hyped in all of the outdoors magazines, and basically a lot of wealthy people that like eye candy, natural eye candy, they buy a second or third home in Montana. And so as a result, there's nobody living there. I mean, there's just everybody, because Montana has some challenging weather. It's hard to get to and out of. So people probably intended to live there more, and they're just visiting whenever. So it's one of those kind of sad states, in my opinion, where people don't really live there, other than the fourth generation, third generation Montanan, and they really like to brag about that. And everybody supports that third generation entrepreneur. They're probably a little xenophobic. And it means like if you're white, if you're from like New York or somewhere else, they're really into, like, at least where I was in Missoula, they really wanted to support that third generation Missoulan. And it couldn't just be you were third generation, you had to be kind of like, kind of, I don't know, be flashy or something like that. Because there was also kind of like this clickiness there, and mean spiritedness that I observed personally. So I also want to say, so people like they talk up Montana, and also I think like there's a big satanic witchcraft community there, and people are like, oh yay witchcraft, oh yay Satanism, no big deal, it's a joke. People are doing spells, and they're doing group activities that just look up the history of these things. It is not good for life forms, is all I'm going to say. So, no offense to ranchers and farmers and whoever who are down to earth people that actually really live there. And, you're just being your little provincial selves, and that's, fine. And there's like this huge progressive liberal thing there. Like I was watching and hosting a video series about the Constitution at the Peace Center. And in my experience, when I've lived in other liberal places, the classical liberal is you're open minded. You're like, oh, let me learn about Chinese food. Let me learn about African food. But in Missoula, Montana, no, you hate. If you're a progressive liberal, you hate the United States, and you hate God, and you hate the Constitution, and you hate the Bible, and that's that person's fault, or anybody who believes in those things, everything is their fault. So, and of course I'm painting in broad strokes, but I was hosting an event, and I was like, hey, progressive liberals, if you hate the Constitution, let's learn what it is that you hate. But instead they canceled me. They canceled their membership to this place that I was hosting the event at. It was absolutely ridiculous. It was so hypocritical, because the whole progressive liberal virtue signaling is, oh, I'm so open-minded, I'm so accepting. Except if you're a Christian, if you're heterosexual, if you're white, if you believe in the Constitution, if you believe in the United States, if you're a male, especially, oh, crime against humanity. And, the road to hell is paved with good intentions because the liberals are telling themselves, hating white people, heterosexual males, they're like, oh, well, if I hate those people, then that's going to make the world a better place. And it's absolute insanity. But, anyways, so, things are not what these so-called experts that are uh, like promoting these kind of unfamiliar states. Things are not what you think it is, and I'm telling you this because it's a pain to pick up and move. So um, Montana is not going to be what you expect if you're coming from a city, if you're coming from like an academic, world class professional location. Because in Montana, because it's kind of there's a lot of nepotism. A lady who's from there, who's a local, she called it inbred, because everybody's just into themselves. They're into their own people. They're not like, hey, welcome. They're not into getting new blood. The economy is tough there. There's not a whole lot of options. Not a whole lot of resources, jobs, and whatnot. So very limited resources. It's very competitive, and the Missoulians, for instance, just want Missoulians to get the good stuff. And the caliber of like electrical, plumbing, whatever, is very poor. The states around Montana will not hire the electrical, plumbing, blah, blah, blah guys from Montana because they know the work is not going to be up to par because these dudes are like, well, I'm a third generation, whatever, Montanan, so I need the work. I gotta take care of my family. So you're gonna pay me, you're gonna hire me because I need the work, not because I'm a good employee. And I'm not saying that all of them are terrible, but I'm not, I like, I have had bad experiences just with, um, and I would say like, because let's say Missoula, but Montana, it's popular real estate. So there's predatory realtors there. There's predatory landlords there. So it's not all local because Montana it's really popular. It looks good. It's eye candy. So, I met some nice people from Montana. I met some nice working people there. But um, there's just this mentality that you do not expect when you're from like San Francisco or New York or even Portland, Oregon, where it's more just more international or more national. So all the romanticization of these places that I'm telling you about, it's I would disagree. But I have met other people who have relocated from Europe, and they just absolutely love it. It's their dream come true. But I just want to put in my 2 cents. So South Dakota is another one that I keep on hearing, and I'm like, okay, South Dakota has crazy weather. It's got this high ultraviolet light index. Now, when I was in Montana, for some reason, it just didn't seem to have that. But Missoula, Montana has a lot of forest fires in the summer. So you can have a month of smoke every time you go outside. So and they don't talk about that. It's called an inversion. Like if you're in where there's a bunch of mountains surround you and you're in a valley. And so so you can have an inversion in the summer when there's forest fires, and then there's an inversion in the winter where the pollution stays in because it's sort of how the valley is. So it's just not very healthy, sort of like how the Willamette Valley in Oregon, that it's lends to more mold or something like that, and it can be unhealthy. So Uh, yeah, Montana. So South Dakota. I would say that people were more friendly, like less clicky. I mean, there's definitely clicky people I've met there, but um, I would say the, you know, I mean, and there was classism. I would say, like in Montana and South Dakota, some people were pretty classist. And maybe that's just everywhere. Maybe that's just the sign of the times in 2022, just the past several years. Or it could be just that I'm in these more provincial parts of the USA where people have generations of wealth that they've inherited or acquired, as opposed to when you're living in New York or San Francisco or even Portland. A lot of people have relocated and they're self-made, and people are kind of they're not just extremely wealthy. At least that was my experience. Like in major cities, the cost of living is so much that it kind of is it evens things out, because the person who has a mansion uh, is paying, is like, okay, they're paying for that mansion or for the expensive apartment or whatever, and so then they kind of are being on a bit of a budget. Some are, or that's what I've experienced. So, um, but South Dakota has intense uh, weather. When I was in the western part, there would be 60-mile-an-hour winds for day after day after day. And as a pedestrian, that was very difficult. And then we'd have a lot of snow, and then it would melt, and then there'd be ice out, on the sidewalks. And same thing with Montana. There'd be a lot of ice on the sidewalks, on the roads. It would be like several inches of ice on the roads, and nobody did anything about it because they only had funding for one day of shoveling or something for a machine to go through. And nobody walks in places like Montana or South Dakota. So you are on your own. And there would be so many sidewalks, like when I was in Missoula, that, it'd be like, up to my knees of snow for days. And, it was just like, and people driving are like, what is your problem? Why are you walking? And that was just the mentality, for sure. Like, they were like, you must be a really bad person if you're walking. And I'm from New York. I like to walk. I like fresh air. I like to hear like birds chirping. I just don't want to hear, I just don't want to be in this automated zombie world that everybody else has bought into. So yeah, the drivers, for 8 years that like the last time I looked up, it was probably in 2019, 2020. Montana for like 8 years in a row had the worst drivers in the nation. But I would say South Dakota is also. I mean, it seems like everybody has become kind of insane and reckless, and like just don't care that they are menacing pedestrians. When a pedestrian is at the crosswalk, so many drivers try complaining to me that a pedestrian crossed in the middle of the road. I'm just talking about at the crosswalk, at my light, when you're stopped. Like, you got to let the pedestrian go. But no, drivers are like, oh, I'm really important. I have things I gotta do. I gotta pick up my Amazon, whatever. I don't know. So I would say drivers in South Dakota, the conditions, the weather conditions, the extreme weather in South Dakota could change, and that 60-mile-an-hour winds was really tough, as well as the high UV rating. Like, that was just really punishing, and I think it gave me kind of heat stroke. And I never had a problem, like such a problem that another thing where I was is there, just in South Dakota, there's not a lot of little pit stops of a little cafe or a little drugstore or a little convenience store to stop, to break up a grueling walk. It's kind of empty. and compared to a major city. So it's just that the weather is it's just more punishing if you're walking. Also, there's a lot of aggressive panhandling that's not addressed. Nobody really does anything about it because of the political climate right now. So that was why I left South Dakota. I was just like, I'm a solo female pedestrian, and I feel targeted, and just kind of like like they knew. I mean, there's no reason to ask me for reparations. So, um, yeah, just bad weather conditions and bad road conditions and aggressive homelessness. Yeah, I did not find South Dakota a good place. And I was in Rapid City. So that's my 2 cents there. And so here in Iowa, people are like, Iowa, it's a flyover state, no big deal. There are crazy storms, major dangerous floods that happen here. Like I'm in Cedar Rapids. So I'm like relocating to another place, looking at Cedar Rapids. Everybody's warning me about like look up the flood. It is I cannot find the flood map thing for Cedar Rapids. Places were 20 feet underwater, and it's a year or so after, a couple of years after the flood. I cannot find the flood information here. So, and I noticed this, like cities will not make this life or death, huge property crisis thing. They do not make it available to you. They make it very hard, and the due diligence, it's your due diligence, but you're going to have to spend hours and have to know somebody who can know somebody to get you that information. Same thing for Missoula. Missoula has the highest suicide rate in the nation. You look it up on the city of Missoula website, it'll say, oh, here's where you click on to find the suicide rates. And then that link is broken. And then there's this other link. I can't remember. I don't know, murders or something like that. I don't think it's high for murders, but there was just something else that the link was broken to. um, so, yeah, Iowa. So I would say it's kind of a ghost town of a state from what I've experienced, compared to living in other more lively areas. But I would say there's infrastructure. Um, and it seems like it's a good springboard if you're traveling to other parts of the country. But like, why just tell us where the flood is predicted to happen, where the weather warfare is gonna try to kill everybody. Just let us know, okay? And so we can deal with it. Like it's just so annoying when the deep state just uh, sets things up and doesn't let you just be honest with us, and we'll like work around your craziness. And there's only like 5 people that really will work around you because everybody else thinks it's a joke, it's a conspiracy theory. So just let those of us that don't want to deal with being your victim, let us just opt out, because there's so many people who want to be your victim. So let them be your victim. Don't make those of us who don't want to have to deal with your crap. So anyways, Iowa has crazy weather. So I don't know why nobody talks about it, but it had a crazy derecho, I think it's called. It's a crazy windstorm. It's like a tornado, hurricane, or whatever. So a couple of years ago, it took out like 60% of the trees here. So, but all these people recommending Iowa don't talk about it. So this is in Cedar Rapids, but apparently this kind of crazy storm happens regularly. And but it seems like, and actually, when I was in South Dakota, there was a crazy flood that happened in South Dakota in the early 70s. And so there's dangerous 100-year floods, 500-year floods. Oh wow, they seem to be happening. And of course, there's all this money that's been um, you know, assigned to it, but has the infrastructure been established? No, because the money's like the profit is in the crisis. All these places want to have things flooded and people die and stuff like that, because then that city is going to get federal funding, and there's going to be more taxes perhaps that you can put on people, and there's going to be these people who feel guilty, and so they're going to donate, and that money is just going to go line the government, or the representatives, whoever's pockets. It's not going to go to protecting you. So if they just let us know what the truth, we can work around it. And but instead they just like to jerk us around and play games. So anyways, I would say if you are looking to relocate, I would say like there seems to be a lot of decent potential. Like there's like, I would say Iowa is a diamond in the rough. um, and it's kind of poor. It seems kind of abandoned. There's not a whole lot of like things to do, but it could. Like I feel like all the overflow from California and New York should come to Iowa, and like buy a house, and don't make it at some sort of perverted kink place. Like let's just try to survive. Like let's just have a good quality of life. Don't try to make it some sort of political statement. Um, so, anyways, and lastly, I left Virginia because I was living in Norfolk, because and I was scared of the hurricanes there because there were flooding, and actually it was easy to find the flood zone stuff there when I was in Virginia. Uh, so, but yeah, every time it rained, I was like really scared of a flood happening. And you don't think about a flood happening in Iowa, but they do. So, yeah, that's kind of disappointing. So, those are my thoughts. So, in case it helps anybody, thanks for listening. God bless.